Hello, BookTube. Well, as you may have seen from another video, my old friend Deb came over today to sit with Frida, to hang out with Frida, to play with Frida, to nap with Frida, and that freed me to do some errands. And I did. Some of them I had been backed up forever. Doesn't make any sense. Frida can be left. She's just going to be a little sad for a little while, and so am I, to be away from her. It's not the end of the world, but I don't do it nearly as often as I should. When you have a dog person, another dog person, someone who gets dogs as well as you do, and they're willing to come over, then you take advantage of that. So I did. And there were quite a few errands that I had to run. And when I left, I said my goal was to come back with no books, because I already have a huge amount of books. And I completely failed. I completely failed. I came back with an enormous number of books, and I want to show them to you. so we'll start off with mass market paperbacks. I have made various times in my life, I have said, mass market paperbacks they're not very hospitable to read once you're accustomed to trade paperbacks or even more ebooks. So maybe I don't need a million of them. I got rid of tons and tons of them. In recent years, in recent months, I have been thinking maybe that's, there's no reason to be absolutist about that. Some mass markets are fine. Some things you prefer in that format. They're not that hard to read. They are very convenient. So when I find mass markets now that I really want, I just grab them, especially if they're free. And virtually, I think the total price tag for all of these books was like $4, something like that total. The first three I found at the Brattle Bookshop, and they are a response to BookTube in a way. There's a BookTube read along of Robert Jordan's Eye of the World series, these gigantic Eye of the World series. There's a BookTube. I'll leave a link to the channels that are doing it, where the read along is to read one of those books each month until they're gone, until they're all done. And we're going to start with the Eye of the World, which I grabbed off my shelf. I had this trade paperback that I've had forever. This is I read Eye of the World. This is it's the Wheel of Time. It's not the Eye of the World series. It's the Wheel of Time series. First book is Eye of the World, and I read it when it first came out, and I think I read this edition next. I think I've read the book twice, so I'm due for a reread, especially since it's been so popular. And I had this trade paperback on my shelf, and I thought, okay, there's a read along. You've got a book, so you're definitely in. And I thought when I was looking at it, I thought, well, I like it. It's a big, colorful trade paperback. The only problem is that the hardcover and the mass market both had an inner step back of artwork. So you got our main characters here, they're walking along in the wilderness. This is Michael Whelan. Yes, this is Michael Whelan. No. Oh, now I want to know. Okay, amazingly it does not say, but it doesn't matter. I think this is Michael Whelan artwork. The one thing that this book was missing was that step-back artwork, which is another scene. It's this same party, only they're entering a village. They're not out in the wilderness under a full moon. They're entering a village. And it didn't matter. I told myself it doesn't matter. You have the book. That's all you need. But in the back of my mind, I thought, if I come across a mass market or a hardcover of Eye of the World that does have that artwork, then I will grab it, especially if it's dirt free. And I did. When I was at the Brattle, I found the Brattle sometimes will nudge you along your way, and the Brattle clearly wants me to do this Eye of the World, this Wheel of Time read along, because I found the mass market, which has, you see, the same cover, but then it has a step back of artwork. An interesting design. I will reinforce this mass market 6 ways from Sunday so that it's just a brick. And while I was there, the Brattle also had the next two, The Great Hunt and Dragon Reborn. So I've got a good start on things. I now have to look for book 4 and on from there. But I have the first 3. That'll do me for, to get me into the summer. And I thought, when I found those, I thought, well, that's convenient. It's dirt cheap. Yes, you'll have 2 copies. But then the next place I went, I found the hardcover of Eye of the World, which also has the step-back artwork. So it just goes to show you that sometimes fate can be pretty insistent. But at the Brattle, I also found a mass market of Alan Drury, who was a political thriller writer who has now fallen completely into desuetude. No one remembers Alan Drury anymore, unfortunately. He wrote a whole bunch of American political thrillers, the most famous of which was Advise and Consent. He also wrote a 2-volume historical series pairing set in ancient Egypt that was quite good. And I found one today that I've only read once. I read it when it first came out, and I dismissed it angrily in print as totally irresponsible fear-mongering. It's from 1981, I believe. I believe this came out in 1981. 1981, and it's called The Hill of Summer. And it's got the hammer and sickle smashing the dome of the Capitol. And it's not on the cover, but the subtitle of the book is A Novel of Soviet Conquest. And if I remember correctly, at the beginning of the book, the president has just died, on the 4th of July, no less. And his vice president has come to power unprepared to be president. The man was healthy, so the vice president wasn't expecting to ever be president. And at the same time, there is an ascendant Soviet leader who has extremely aggressive tendencies. And this is all about what political Washington and diplomatic Washington would do in response to that, summits and memorandums and whatnot. And the author wrote the book in order to have the Soviets win, in order to have their aggression be directly directed towards America, be systematic and direly threatening. And the book is not set in 1981. It's set in the mid-1980s. It's actually Drury setting it a few years in the future, just a handful of years in the future. One presidential administration in the future. And the clear message is that it's a warning. And when this book first appeared, the Soviet Union had less than 10 years of life to it. There was never going to be a Soviet invasion, a novel of Soviet conquest. That was never going to happen, no matter what this book or Red Dawn or anything like that had to say on the subject. The heart of the Soviet economy had already been bored out. It would have been a last-ditch suicidal effort. It would not have been state upon state conquest. And I didn't know that in 1981, and neither did Alan Drury. Instead, I was mad at the book for being just scaremongering. When then, as now, diplomacy is a really good tool. You don't want to rule it out. But now that all that is over, I could not resist this. This was $1, and I could not resist it because Alan Drury, to read his most explicitly geopolitical novel now, is going to be just endlessly fascinating. I admit that's not the right motivation for rereading a novel, is the kind of smugness of hindsight, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. Drury is a kind of labored writer. He's not particularly good on a line-by-line basis, so I wouldn't be savoring this for the literature anyway. Instead, this has become fascinating in its own right as a sort of a time capsule thing, so I couldn't pass it up. Then this next one is, it's a mass market paperback. I had all of these. This one is not, I don't think this is one of mine. No, this isn't one of mine, but I should never have got rid of them. It hadn't occurred to me when I was getting rid of them that they are such standout editions. The Oxford World Classics line, when they still had mass market paperbacks, they did a centenary edition of all of Anthony Trollope. This is The American Senator. But they were these lovely mass markets with great covers and fantastic editorial materials, just fantastic. Better than the Penguins and better than the subsequent Oxfords. So this is a set worth having on its own. And I, like a fool, I got rid of most of them. I kept the ones that I really, really love, the Prime Minister or the Duke's Children or Orley Farm. But I got rid of most of them. I had all of them at one point. So now I'm just, like an idiot, I'm just kicking myself and grabbing them whenever I find them. So I found this one. It will be a natural reason to reread. And then this next one of those taller prestige mass market paperbacks that I requested. This came out a few years ago, just a few years ago. I requested it when it was just in announcements and not even in Galley yet. I requested it when it was in Galley. I requested a finished copy. My requests were just ignored. I didn't get any copies of this book, and so I didn't read it. So I will be encountering it now for the first time. This is Jim Butcher. This is the Aeronaut's Windlass, the first book in the Cinder Spires series. A very, very nice cover, very, very a big, thick, hefty thing, a very interesting sort of retro steampunk sci-fi fantasy. Totally interested to see what this author does. I like this author. I just By the time it was out in this paperback, I was just dug in that I wasn't going to buy it if the publisher's just ignoring me. But it was basically free today, and I am curious to read it now, especially now that all thought of reviewing it is gone. I don't even have to think about that anymore. And this next one is a mass market of an author we saw in hardcover just a couple of weeks ago when I went on a book buying binge with Chris and Giselle Rhodes. This is Paul Doherty. This is The Anubis Slayings, another book in his series of murder mysteries set in ancient Egypt. I don't know if this means I'm going to start encountering all of them, but I was a little leery of the hardcover, to tell you the truth, because murder mysteries are not things you typically keep, and hardcovers take up space. So finding this author in a series of mass market paperbacks would suit me right down to the ground. But then I found a bunch of trade paperbacks and hardcovers as well. I'll try to keep this video brief. This first one is one of these. Time Life did a series of trade paperbacks years and years and years ago, 50, 60 years ago, that had really thick cardboard stock covers. They weren't paper covers. They weren't hardcover either. They were sort of in between, usually with surrealistic artwork on the cover. And they did really well, and Time Life poured a huge amount of money into. The list of books is enormous. The problem that I found with them is that the materials don't age well, so they're very hard to read. You get, for instance, Naked to My Enemies, the Cardinal Wolsey biography. It's impossible to read those volumes. I think you've seen one of them on this channel. And this one, I was leery of that when I saw this, because I don't want a book that I can't read. But this one seems remarkably flexible, far more so than any book on this series that I've ever got. This is Loren Eiseley. This is The Immense Journey, a collection of natural history essays. He's just fantastic. I love him. And I don't have a copy of any of his stuff. I don't have any Loren Eiseley. This will be it. But this is a lot more flexible. This I could actually read. You can't do this with most of these books. So I was happy to find it. Then what have we got here? What's next? Oh, yes. Okay. A book to go here in the room. To go in. There's a bookshelf. Where is it? It's where Meg is sticking out. Right there. Right there. Right at the end of my finger. That's where Meg is sticking out. Those two bookcases there, where the elephant of surprise is, are collections of book reviews and book essays. My own profession. It's tough to get such a book made. You have to be a name. You have to have an audience. And I love them. Absolutely love them. I spend time poring over those penguins. And I spend time poring over that bookcase there. I go to them over and over again. They would survive even the most caustic book winnowing. And this is one of those. This is The Fun Stuff by James Wood. Just a collection of pieces of his all over the map from Edmund Wilson. This has his classic write-up of The Road by Cormac McCarthy and a bunch of other stuff. And I don't have it. The minute I saw it, I realized I didn't have it, and I want it. Then this next one is something I've had. I've had copies of it before. I will probably give it away. I mentioned the other day that in 2018, science fiction lost a giant. They lost a great editor. Gardner Dozois died. And he was in a rank of great science fiction editors. Everybody thinks of John Campbell. Gardner Dozois was in that company. And there was one other, I think better than both of them. That's Terry Carr, who did a ton of anthologies, always had an unfailing eye for things, and introduced me to a lot of authors, a lot of great stories. And he did the year's best science fiction, but he also did every year. There's a whole shelf of those if you can find them. But he also did the Universe series, also numbered, also every year. So it gave him a chance to highlight a whole bunch of great stuff. And this is Universe number 10. Just a thin thing, full of short stories. There isn't a dud in the bunch, but the reason why I always get number 10, as opposed to getting all of them, is because this has the short story The Ugly Chickens by Howard Waldrop, who never caught on outside of the ranks of science fiction readers. Science fiction cognoscenti love him, but the outside world doesn't know Howard Waldrop, and now they never will. I'm sure that Waldrop is totally out of print and will stay that way. What I wouldn't give for a collected stories. What I wouldn't give. That would be so nice. But he wrote a book called The Ugly Chickens. A short story called The Ugly Chickens that technically has no science fiction in it. Only he could pull that off. Him and James Tiptree, who is also in this anthology, who has written a couple of science fiction short stories that have no science fiction in them. But in The Ugly Chicken, an ornithology graduate student in Austin, Texas, comes upon really good evidence that seems to suggest that dodos, the great Mauritius dodo, lived a lot longer than anyone thinks, that they might not be extinct. And the short story is just it's a great ride of a short story with him trying to find them, trying to find dodos in the living world. And it has a wonderful, bittersweet ending and fantastic scenes in it. I just love it. And this is one of the only places I ever see it, is in these old collections. Terry Carr anthologized it twice. Once in Year's Best Science Fiction and once in Universe 10. So, and the Universe volumes, these Universe volumes all had mass market reprints as well, with the old Timescape imprint. So you can find them at used bookstores if you're lucky. And if you see a science fiction anthology and it has Terry Carr's name on it, you will not go wrong. No matter whether it's this one or any other. So I had to grab it because I'm never really clear on how many copies I have. This next one is really old, warped with time and the elements and whatnot. Got a lot of character to it. I'm sure that I will like reading it. And it goes hand in hand with the Paul Doherty. Only this is the mother of all Egyptian historical novels. There's never been one that sold as well as this. This is The Egyptian by Mike Waltari. He went on to do the Roman, the Etruscan, a whole bunch of other. I wonder if they're listed in here. This is an old. This edition is from 1949, and it mentions nothing else. It mentions, I guess the back has an advertisement for The Adventurer, which is also a book of his. But The Egyptian was the thing that put him on the map, and it sold like crazy. Just sold like crazy. It was a lot of fun. People would come into bookstores without any clippings, without any information, and they would say, "I'm looking for that book, the one about the Egyptian." It's called The Egyptian. It wasn't hard. I haven't read this in forever. I had an old square red paged mass market paperback from 1,000,000 years ago that I read, and it fell apart. So I'm happy to reread this. Absolutely happy. Then this next one is also a reread. This is Andrew Solomon. This is Far from the Tree. Big fat book of his. This is the lovely trade paperback that wow, okay, it made a ton of year's best book lists. It also made my year-end book list. And the subtitle is Parents, Children, and the Search for Identity. And it's all about heredity and upbringing, nature versus nurture, and all that. Just a fantastic, fantastic book. I'll try to remember to leave a link to the list of mine that it made, but as soon as I saw it, I realized I didn't have it, and I want it. The same thing with this next one of the greatest works of political nonfiction in American history. This is Richard Ben Kramer's What It Takes. The Way to the White House. This is what happens when a man sacrifices privacy for power. What drives a politician to risk ruin of his family, his marriage, his children for the sake of ambition. And this is all about the 1988. He explores the lives of the candidates who would run for president in 1988 and tries to discover what convinced them that they could lead the United States of America. And it's incredible. Just incredible. Its portrait of Bob Dole is amazing and stirring. Its portrait of all of the also-rans who have become footnotes, including Gary Hart, is amazing. And the highlight of the whole book is the portrait of George H.W. Bush, which is, well, you'll never forget it when you read. And I love this book. I have it. I get it and I give it away. I get it and I give it away. I saw it. I realized I didn't have a copy, so I'm hoping I hold on to this one. Then same thing with this next one. When I get copies, I give them away. This is a lovely trade paperback that I don't think I've ever seen. This is Quill, so it may be UK, and it's Carolee Erickson. It's Bloody Mary, her really good biography of Mary Tudor. When I saw it, I wasn't immediately aware of whether or not I had it, so I grabbed it because it was free. And then this last one I want to show you is a UK trade paperback. I love them anyway. This is Ian Rankin. This is Flesh Market Clothes from a few years ago in a big, lovely UK trade paperback. This is a John Rebus mystery, and it if I remember correctly, it centers around the ill will closeting on the subject of immigration, all taking place in Edinburgh, and Edinburgh just comes alive in these stories. I don't think I've read this in forever, so I admit the format helps. If I went to used bookstores and all I saw were UK trade paperbacks, I'd buy them all. So there you go. I won't try to make a Steve Pyramid because it's a huge number of books. It was a very fruitful day for used books, for books I absolutely do not need. So I don't know if you'd call that fruitful. I now have, yes, you're right, 3 copies of Eye of the World. But anyway, I'll wrap this up for now. But we have plenty more bookish stuff to talk about, so I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.